Hey everyone, welcome back to Danger Planet. Today we're joined by Rage Quit Wire Pete. Hey Pete.
Hey, you guys are a little slow on the draw, but I'm here to catch you up.
And we are here to do our hot take for the rework of Brewmaster and the Tri-Chi keyword. All right, folks. So, as you may have seen last Wednesday at time of recording, we just got a surprise rework of Brewmaster and the Tri-Chi keyword. Not totally surprising. For those of you who are following Wyrd doing their big summer tournament event, they introduced this new model, Nia, and the idea was that she would go to one of 8 keywords in each faction, depending on which faction won the most tournament games. And she ended up going to Tri-Chi and Bayou. So we're going to be getting this cool new model, Nia, a beach margarita Nia, which is pretty cool looking. But pending that release, they've decided to take a look at the Tri-Chi keyword and basically polish up some of the models there that were maybe languishing a little or didn't really have a clear use case, which is really cool. It's exciting. This is a keyword that I think has not been that popular for a long time, so it's being changed up, and we're just here to talk about the models that have changed and then also some of the models that haven't changed and maybe what their role is in the new Tri-Chi keyword. So before we get started, does anyone have anything to add?
I'm really excited to play some more Brewmaster, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
And Pete also did it. If you guys have a second, we're gonna link it below in the video. Pete actually released well before us. I think he was the first person to release any content on it. Like I think day of released a review of the Tri-Chi keyword. So that's going to be linked in the body of the video here.
We do the hottest of the hottest.
Yeah, that was like literally the hottest of the hot takes. That'll be linked in the body below as well. Yeah, Pete, we're excited to have you on. Thank you for coming on. If you guys don't know, Rage Quit Wire does really, really good tactical videos. And Pete has been playing the game for a long time as a Bayou player. My first ever official tournament loss 3.5 years ago was to Rage Quit Wire Pete. I was playing as Brewmaster, and he was playing as, or I was playing as Jackdaw. He was playing as Brewmaster. So it feels only fitting that he's on this episode to talk about it.
Yeah, I think
have you gotten to play yet?
Yeah, I have, and I think the big thing with why they did this whole rework is because a lot of people like the idea of Tri-Chi because they're like, oh yeah, drunk monks, this stuff is super cool, looks cool, I love it. And then you kind of play it and you realize it's a lot of bookkeeping and you got to figure out, oh, I have 20 poison on this model. And okay, well, this one has 7 poison. So how much poison damage is that? And you got to do all this mental, math and gymnastics. And it kind of, I think it turns people off. And I think this new version will bring them back to it because it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I also feel like in the old version, at least after the nerf to the title version, the payoff just wasn't really there. So I think Brewmaster's cool. There's a lot more to this crew than just putting poison on people and then letting the poison kill them. So I think let's just go through the guys that have changed. And we could start with the original master, the Brewmaster. Now, I don't think it really makes sense to just walk through every single individual change to the card because it basically got completely rewritten. So just to give you the high-level overview, Brewmaster, his front of card is, I'd say, pretty impressive. He's got 6-7 defensive stats, 12 health. He's got a nice little trigger on both his defensive stats that's built in on defense that poisons the attacking model, and it's after resolving, so it always goes off. And then he has a few passive auras that basically change the way poison works. The first one is when an enemy model takes poison damage within 8 inches of him, it takes +1 damage, which is great. Just a little bit of extra ping when you ping someone with poison. And then second, if an enemy model has 3 poison or more, and they start their activation within 8 inches, they gain slow. And that's hugely powerful, because if you slow someone when they activate, you're cutting off their ability to clear that slow with another model. And that's something I think a lot of condition crews struggle with, is that condition removal is just something you really are priced into bringing when you play Malifaux these days. And just not being able to remove that slow is a really big deal. Beyond that, he's got closing time, which is that when he targets a model that's poisoned, he gets a plus twist to his duels, which is going to be a lot of the time, because a lot of the time the people he's targeting, friendly or enemy, are going to be poisoned.
Yeah.
And he simply doesn't take poison damage. which is great and kind of necessary. And finally, he has a rule that lets him treat his liver damage attack as a melee 2 inches, which we'll talk about when we get to his back of card. So before flipping over, any thoughts on the changes to his front of card?
Yeah, what do you think, Pete?
I mean, I just think that it got cleaned up pretty well. It kept the good stuff that I think fits with the play style of this version of Brewmaster. But for example, the one that, you pushed a model away, I think it was a mass trigger or something. You had to win the duel, and the model also had to have poison on it. And it really didn't come up that much. It was funny when it did, but it was kind of a meme instead of an actual useful ability. And yeah, I like that they also gave him closing time, because as we're going to see on the back of his card, that just makes him more efficient because you're just not having to cheat everything out of your hand to do the big splashy things you want to do with Brewmaster. So yeah, I'm definitely pumped about the front of the card, and the back of the card's pretty nuts too.
Yeah, so the big change to him is he no longer has his stacking +1 on his stats when he's doing duels against models with poison, which was kind of splashy and powerful when it happened, because you'd end up being like the effective defense 7 or willpower 9, stat 8 attacks. But it was both kind of swingy, and also it was the usefulness of it was kind of capped by the usefulness of his abilities, and I think his abilities now are more useful than they were. So we've got liver damage as his first attack. It's kind of his main attack. It's an 8-inch range, stat 6 against defense. And as we discussed just now, he can also use it as a 2-inch melee. And it's just a standard 2, 3, 4. The target always gains poison 2. And then it has a trigger called Cirrhosis, which is kind of funny. It's a lot like the Smolder trigger that a lot of burning models have, where you just tick someone's poison condition down and they take 1 point of damage, so it makes it kind of a 3, 4, 5. And then he also has a trigger that just splashes out some poison to the target and models near the target. So this is like your basic kind of workhorse melee attack. I think this is something you'll do a decent amount of the time, but I don't know if it's the main thing you're going to do with him, because even with the +1, 2, 3, 4, or 3, 4, 5 is just not that impressive as like, it's okay, but a master with a stat 6, 3, 4, 5 that has to in order to get there has to declare a non-built-in trigger is not really what I'd consider a beat stick. What do you guys think?
It feels like a decently supportive offensive ability, but Brandon and I play tested a game of me as Brewery 2 into him and a game of me as Brewery 1 into him last night to try all this stuff. And it felt like some of the most impressive stuff he was doing was like as a friendly obey or a friendly support master. And I was spending a lot of my time thinking like, how am I going to use Brewery 1 to support the Whiskey Golem so that it can then go beat face, right? With like the fast action, or I think what we're about to talk about after this, which is the all important move a model 6 inches and then have it take an action for like a low mask, basically. Right?
Yeah, last call. I think that's the main action you're going to take, and we'll just segue into that. It's a 12-inch range ability, stat 7 on willpower. It has a TN, but it's low. It's 12. And it's move the target up to 3 inches, but if they have poison, it's up to 6 inches. And that's by itself pretty strong. He used to have lure there, and this is just a way better lure because it's not towards you; it's anywhere. And then but it has 3. I think triggers that are very important. First is hazy vision. Is the model, the area around the model is treated as concealing, which is kind of the natural thing to do when you're pushing your own model up. Smashed gives the target poison, and then the real spice here is a small favor. Is a mask trigger. The target must have poison +3 or greater. It's just an obey. It's an obey that doesn't have the once per turn limit. So I think a lot of the time when this guy's in position and when you've done your thing and gotten poison on your opponent's models and on your own models, this guy's activation is going to be last call, last call, last call, positive twist all 3 times. Yeah. And either you're obeying your own guys, and you can obey like the Whiskey Golem to smash 3 times, or you can obey, fingers. You can obey your guys to interact. You can do all kinds of good stuff. Or you're just going to be obeying enemy models. And every obey is preceded by a 6-inch move. So it's just the amount of AP efficiency you can get with this guy is unreal.
What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this version of Brewmaster because he just is kind of controlling the scrum, and you can envision him, tossing models around the board and just kind of making them take drinks and do bad decisions to their own crew. Or he really just has a lot of options because off of that, like you said, it's probably a 6-inch movement off last call. But then you can punch stuff, or you could just be like, hey, buddy, go over there and drop a scheme marker for me. Okay, cool. That scores me VPs. That's awesome. But I do also like that he is also able to kill stuff because liver damage, it's a solid attack. Like, you're never going to say no to that. But he also still has blood poisoning. So he still has that spiky thing to finish off a model. So it's like he's still going to kill stuff, but also
situational spike
really
damage if needed, which is nice.
Yeah, blood poisoning is pretty cool. I think it's usually not the bonus action you do. It's just an 8-inch stat 6 on willpower that it basically is kind of burns out their poison, so reduce the poison condition.
But it's nice to have access to it if you need it to kill a thing.
And remember, you can deal 6 damage with it, because it's damage from poison. So alcohol poisoning triggers if the target's within 8 inches, which it will always be. So if somebody has 5 poison on them, you target them with blood poisoning, they take 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's that's neat. I think that it's cool, but I think by the time you get 5 poison on an enemy model, that enemy model is probably just close to dead from the other stuff you did to it to put the poison on it. So maybe this kind of pushes them over the edge, or maybe it's just a way of like if you really need one guy to die, you just focus on them and go like liver damage, blood poisoning.
Yeah, I see it as a way as tipping over like a big annoying model that you've already invested a bunch of crap in trying to kill.
Yeah, I agree. And then his other bonus action I really like, Bartender's Handshake. It's a tactical targeting friendlies with an 8, a stat 5, TN 10, so you just need a 5, and it heals the target 1, 2, 3, and if they have poison, you draw a card, and then it has 3 triggers. There's a built-in trigger to give them poison, there's a mask trigger to push them 4 inches in any direction, and then there's a tome trigger to give them poison 1, but also give models near them poison 1. And I think this is just, it's great. It's supporting your models. The Whiskey Golem feels really good to heal. It draws you a card, and it's a way of pulsing out poison onto enemy models unresisted, which is a really big deal because as long as they have a single poison on them, closing time activates and Brew is at a plus twist to get them.
Yeah, I envision a lot of games where Brewmaster is just hanging out with the Whiskey Golem turn 1, and then you just knock aside at 4, and then you last call it, and then all of a sudden it's, with the mask trigger for a small favor, you just moved it 6,
way out there,
4 off the bonus, and then you have it charge or something. That's a smooth 15 inches of movement. Not too bad.
Yeah. I mean,
rocket-fueled Whiskey Golem.
Yeah, the Whiskey Golem is really going to get into your opponent's face. I think that thing is... The Whiskey Golem, in my opinion, and we can talk about it more when we get to the Whiskey Golem part later on, but that's a model that I think is kind of underhired because it's hard to... most Bayou keywords are not set up to just support a single powerful beater like that, but holy crap, does that thing beat face.
Well, and also Bartender's Handshake now can heal the Whiskey Golem, which there's not a lot of other stuff in the keyword that used to be able to do that, so that's a big deal.
And also the totem can heal the Whiskey Golem too.
Yeah. So overall, before we move on, you guys, what do you guys think about Brewmaster? He seems like he's kind of a control, debuff, friendly obey master, which is, I think, a kind of a neat package. It's also, I like that unlike some of the similar friendly obey masters, like Anya too, for example, sometimes Brewmaster can just pick somebody and kill them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's he's a control master that has the ability to do a reasonable amount of damage when needed, which I like that ability. It's nice to be able to actually damage something when you need to, but still also have a primary game plan of I'm going to flood you with friendly obeys and really versatile AP, because like Pete just pointed out, when you do these obeys, it's whatever it's helpful to score you points. Sometimes that's going to be move the model 6, use another AP to move again. Sometimes that's move 6, attack. Sometimes that's move 6, interact. And you can just flood the board with this amount of AP plus movement. And it's such a force multiplier. And then when needed, you can kind of target stuff away to shoot it, right? Because you can do a decent amount of ticks of damage, both with the fast action and, his normal attack, especially with the Cirrhosis trigger.
Yeah, and the other thing is, this version of Brewmaster, it used to be very telegraphed to what you were doing, because it's you're going to activate Brewmaster first, and you're going to go try to kill something. Whereas this version, you can do that. Like you could activate him first and absolutely kill something. But I think actually holding his activation till end of turn or close to it and just being like, cool, I kind of read the board now. Okay, I see how I can score my points. I can deny you by killing that model, or I can, deny you that scheme that you're trying to score. So I think he's just really better suited now for control and just scoring points.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
I like the new Brewmaster 1 stuff. He sort of reminds me a lot of Errata 1 though. In that he has this like spikier bubble around him, but he has a lot of the same tricks, which I think is going to be good for Bayou players that are like looking to pick up a couple different crews, because like Brewmaster 1 is going to play a lot like Errata 1, or at least you can play that way. But blood poisoning I think is undervalued by a lot of people as somebody coming from the McMorning world. Like the ability to just chunk out 5 damage to people is pretty crazy. And like there's this really, really scary death zone around him that you do not want to be in if you do not have protection from poison. Yeah, he's, and also it didn't even come up in playing last night that he's 6'7", because I just left him alone. But
Yeah.
crap.
He has 7 willpower too. Like he literally just has 7 willpower, which is sick.
6 defense on top of it. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah,
that's
that's
great.
6-7 is about as good as Master defensive stats get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about his title for a minute. Moonshiner was R.I.P. This guy. He was released as a very, very complicated, very, very broken master. And then he got nerfed, and he was still very, very complicated, but also just bad. So the changes are pretty interesting. He's much more of like a offensive kung fu monk. So he's 6'5", defensive stats. He's got high tolerance, just like the original Brewmaster. But he's got a bunch of combat abilities. He has butterfly jump, so any attack action targeting him, after it resolves, he moves 3 inches, which is a really strong ability and kind of insane on a master.
Yeah.
Drunken Kung Fu, which I think Drunken Kung Fu I'm gonna save for a bit because this ability is central to how he works. But the short version is he treats all positives as negatives and all negatives as positives, always, permanently, forever. And then he has some other cute stuff. He has a little 2-inch aura around himself where enemy models treated as hazardous. And then Tipsy Slide is during the start phase. He gets to pick 3 models with poison within aura 8, and he can push each of them up to 3 inches based on how much poison they have. So up to 3 poison, they have to go 3 inches.
Yeah, importantly, enemy models treated as hazardous poison 1. It doesn't do damage, it just does poison.
Yes, yeah, the hazardous poison around him. Sorry. The Drunken Kung Fu, I'm just going to really briefly talk about before I turn this over to the group, because this is one of those abilities that is kind of like Eye of the Hurricane, where when you look at the card, you're like, oh, that's kind of neat. Kind of interesting little ability. And then you play it on the board and you're like, oh my god, this is insane.
Yeah.
Because the thing with Drunken Kung Fu is it takes away one thing from you. You can't make focused attacks. And then in return, it gives you a million things, because there are so many things in this game that are pieces of defensive tech that operate by giving the attacker a negative flip on the hit or the damage or both. And Brewmaster takes these pieces of defensive tech. He not only does he ignore them, he actively benefits from them. So if you charge Brewmaster into Molly Squid Pitch, before you do anything, his melee attacks against her are +1 stat, all at a positive to hit, all at a positive to damage. And the other thing is, people are so used to doing combat math in this game where you're like, I need to get to a straight flip, so I need to beat you by 6. But if you beat somebody by 1 to 5, you're at a positive twist to damage against them.
Yeah.
Which means, and if you tie the defensive flip, you're at double positive to damage. And that is absurd. Like, so many people are just so used to this, because the way you keep masters or models safe in Malifaux is you cheat a high card defensively. That's like the fundamental, this is the tool I have available. It's agnostic to my crew's keywords. If I want to keep my model safe, I cheat a high card defensively. If you cheat a high card defensively against Brewmaster, you are really taking your life in your hands, because if they can match you with a high card, you get blown out. Because say, like, I'm just going to illustrate with a brief example. Normally, you have, say you look at your hand, you have like an 11. Your enemy attacks you, they hit you normally, and you're like, well, I'll cheat this 11. And what'll happen is my opponent will either miss, or he'll cheat a card that is a high card, and I'll get a high card out of his hand, but he'll still be within 5, so his damage flip will be at a negative. So even in the worst case scenario where my opponent cheats and still hits me, I've protected myself somewhat. In Brewmaster, if your opponent cheats an 11, and they're like defense 6, and you just cheat a 10 out of your hand, you're like, okay, I got an 11 out of your hand, and now I'm double positive to damage. Cheating first against Brewmaster is so dangerous, and it's really scary. And if you don't cheat, then your opponent can just basically cheat a low card to get you to match you or be at a 1 to 5, and then just rip your face off.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really strong.
It's so awesome.
It also like for example, you can't even stone them to a negative.
Yeah, you literally cannot stone Brewmaster to a negative. It's fucking awesome.
It's really strong. So the one thing to note, because I know this is a question that comes up a lot, is that Luck Thief still beats Drunken Kung Fu. If you have Drunken Kung Fu and your opponent has Luck Thief, and what you do is you do all the canceling out of modifiers, you do treating positives as negatives, negatives as positives, and then if Brewmaster ends up on some positives, they then become negatives because of the timing on Luck Thief. I'm just getting that out there. It's not a common ability, but that's how it works.
Ooh,
but yeah, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this guy's front of card, because Drunken Kung Fu is just an insane.
Yeah. Pete, what do you think about Brew 2?
Yeah, I was gonna say, coming back to Bayou, I've been trying to rack my head around the Reser drop. That's actually been one that I think Bayou has struggled with a bit. At
Now
least
you
for
have
me.
one.
And now this, Brewmaster Moonshiner was okay against Resers before this. Now he's really good.
So good.
Especially with some of the other models we're going to talk about. Not getting on the back of the card yet, but there's a lot of abilities in these reworks where him and the other model get distracted, which is of course good for him and usually bad for the other model. And yeah, distract is good because that's basically focus for Brewmaster. So
yep,
it's amazing. And they also buffed his damage up because they took the ping away. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of stuff just randomly dying to Moonshiner's staff.
Yeah, so that's actually a good time to talk about his attack. His attack is stat 6 against defense, range 2, 2, 3, 5. The big change is that it used to be a 2, 3, 4, and the 5 is so huge here because, as we just discussed, you're going to be on a straight flip or a positive to damage a lot of the time. So 2, 3, 5, you're going to be hitting that 5 a lot. And it has 3 good triggers. There's a ram trigger to basically just push Brewy 5 inches, ignoring models, and give enemy models he moved through a poison, or any models he moved through a poison. He has a mask trigger where both he and the target gain distracted, which is obviously debuff them to buff you. And then service charge is a lot like Maxine's trigger, Maxine 2, which is if you did not cheat your damage flip, you can draw any one of the cards you flipped in the damage flip that didn't choose. So what's interesting about this trigger is it doesn't work if you're on a straight flip. But if you're not on a straight flip, which you often won't be, you just you flip 3 cards for damage, pick the highest, and draw the second highest. It's great.
Yeah, and because of Drunken Kung Fu, you're going to a lot of times want a low card, because if you cheat second, you can go, cool, I'm going to cheat in this 5 of rams that I drew off of service charge, and now I'm at a double positive or something. So low cards are not bad to have with Brewmaster Moonshiner.
Yeah, for sure. And then he has his Shockwave still, another round. It's going to once per turn, but it's basically just a Willpower 14 Shockwave that hands out 2 poison, and any models that took the poison get pushed 3 inches. And then there's a trigger that eats a scheme marker, touching the Shockwave, or touching in the Shockwave range. And you get a free Soulstone, which is obviously great. Printing Soulstones rules. And then if there's no scheme marker around to remove, you could just reposition him 3 inches. This is fine. The old use case for this was you'd do it 3 times and you'd stack a bajillion poison on your guys. It's once per turn, so you can't do it 3 times anymore, but you're still probably going to do this at least once per activation in the first 2 turns, maybe before he gets really dives deep. It's just an AoE push that buffs your crew and sometimes prints you a Soulstone. It's fine.
Good.
Yeah. And honestly, you don't need to stack up dozens of poison anymore. And you still have party foul, so that's still going to be a good thing to help you out. So you don't really need another round to go off 3 times anymore.
You also don't have the huge aura of making your poison unremovable anymore. Yeah. So there's actually more of a risk in trying to bring Fermented River Monks and stack them to an arbitrarily large amount of poison. So that was a cool game plan, but it was also kind of boring and one-dimensional. So I think it's good to have something a little bit more complicated.
It also revolved around a stat 5 attack that had 0 reach, and he had to pump chi into to make good as well, which was like
That's very true.
You know.
Yeah, and then he still has his ability to just reduce poison by 2 to drop a scheme marker at 8-inch range, which is just awesome for scheming.
Yeah.
And then he has a bonus action that's very easy to go off, just needs a 4. It gives one of your models that's not him a 2-inch aura of hazardous poison, which is great for stacking poison on both your guys and on your opponent's guys. And as a built-in trigger to heal Brewmaster for 2 and give him distracted, which is great because, as we said, it's focus. Imagine if your master had a bonus action that had a built-in effect to give him heal 2 and a focus and give him a hazardous aura.
Yeah.
Seems
I think another big thing, actually, that I just want to mention really quickly, because we did talk about the staff whack, is how strong this ram trigger is on this attack.
Mhm.
It allows him to have a crazy level of movement flexibility where he can just kind of pinball himself deep into an enemy like formation or deployment and like make himself a real fucking problem as early as like turn 2, because you're like charge attack, that's, you know, movement plus reach, push 5 into something else, attack that, try to kill it, and all of a sudden you're like kind of bouncing around inside of a crew as a butterfly jump, hazardous aura. You know, if you put 12 cups of coffee on him, he has diversion as well, which is going to be, you know, awesome. I love giving masters diversion.
The first time I play against Dashel, I'm diving on the stupid dispatcher and murdering the crap out of him.
The problem is he's just going to flip it off onto someone else. It still has protected.
Yeah, but a lot of times, well, maybe not the highest level of Dashel players, but I've seen Dashel players that sometimes they'll forget to leave something close and you can go get it.
You know what you can really do is if you can get close enough and you can put some poison on its protectors, you just tipsy slide them away and then charge in top of the turn.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't think you should forget tipsy slide. It used to be probably the most broken single ability printed in the Malifaux. Maybe compared with like Nexus 2's old ability to reduce your flips. Yeah. But it's much more tame now, but it's still really good. It's still a bunch of free 3-inch pushes at the start of your turn, which is really good. You know, you can pick yourself too. It's just, you know, 3 inches in Malifaux is a lot more than you think it is. Or, you know, I hope that's why I always tell the girls.
That's what you tell the ladies, huh, Sam?
Yeah. It's what you do with it, Doug.
It's what you do with it, not how big it is.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So, like, having been on the receiving end of this, I struggle to see how this isn't just like literally better in every way than Jackdaw. The one thing I think that he does struggle with is punching through armor. That's probably not going to be a thing. But there is zero other defensive technology, as Sam kind of mentioned in the game, that's going to save you. So if you do find yourself coming up against Brewmaster Moonshiner, you can't hire your inexpensive like low health tech models because they will die, and there is little to nothing that you can do about them. Or if you have armor, you're like a little bit more protected, but you got to keep them so far away it's ridiculous and not give them the opportunity to bar and brawl, because Brewmaster 2 can now just deep strike into enemy crews and kill any of the squishy models. And the more defensive they are, the worse they are off against him. Because it's going to get plus flip. Like manipulative, we found out last night, fucking sucks. Like
flexible morality.
I'm like, flexible morality. It just there, you know. And so like, there's a bunch of like, Brewmaster 2 is going to fundamentally warp how you either have to hire or play your crew, and that's really, really important to know. And I don't think that I'm at the point saying that this is so broken it needs to be nerfed immediately. But I think the combination of how Drunken Kung Fu works and the 5 damage was too much. If it were 2, 3, 4, I think it'd be less good. But because you're on so many plus flips, the 5 is super, super relevant. Upping the
but I think it's okay to have something that counters that defensive tech and at least makes you think about it. Like, oh, if they drop Brewmaster here, I don't know if I can play this master. And if you gamble and pick it, and they do pick Brewmaster, you can't bring some of the models that you normally would bring. I think that's an okay spot for the game to be in.
He also is really bad into armor. I think he really struggles into armor. I think I would very much second guess myself bringing Brewmaster into guild because leadline coats make him a lot worse.
Yeah, for 100% for sure. Armor is your saving grace against Brewmaster and the Drunken Kung Fu nonsense. So if you got it, bring it. Bring as much as you can.
All right, let's talk about Wesley. Wesley has barely changed. He still has most of the stuff he did: alcohol poisoning, high tolerance. He has a little lasting liquor aura that just means poison can't be removed on models within 2 inches of him. On friendly models, that is. I've always really liked him. He's a little significant model with sober up, which is a really strong ability. Like Big Brain Bryn has sober up, and a lot of the time I will spend a Big Brain Bryn action to get a sober up with the ram trigger to heal a friendly model, and this guy just does that with the same stat with an always built-in heal too. The big thing that's changed with Wesley is now he has 2 drunk to care. So now when you have poison stacked on him, he has effectively an unpierceable armor +2, which is really important for a 4 health, 4 defense model. But like, yeah, he's significant. He can move as a bonus action. He can heal as a bonus action. He has a daze that you're never going to get off because it's a stat 4. You have to be in melee for it. So good luck. But I think he's great. A lot of the time he's just going to go creep along, sober up. That's his turn. Like sober up is real good. It hands out focus to friendlies. It gets rid of slow and stunned. It heals. It does a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, 2 drunk to care is going to help him stay up a little bit more. Usually people just killed him and that was it. Creep along's probably the biggest thing though, just because there was a lot of times where you just were too far away for the sober up where you wanted it. So the creep along makes it very good to just be like, okay, cool, I'm going to go ahead and push, walk, and now I can sober up and money.
Yeah, it gets you more like a true 3 AP activation because you're like creep along, pseudo walk, sober up, or creep along, walk, get in range, sober up the thing I needed to.
Yeah, I mean, sober up is a really good action, and he has a really good sober up, so I could see this. This is just that's what you're taking him for, and it's really, really strong. So used a lot.
Yeah, I really like Wesley now. 2 drunk to care is a huge deal. He's effectively armor 2, so he's like a squishy totem, and I think having squishy totems is neat. But he's also significant and just does a bunch of support. So like, and 2-inch melee. Sometimes you just walk him in and deny points.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So Cooper Jones. Cooper Jones is a really cool model that like nobody ever hired, because she had very weird anti-synergy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad.
she was well. I mean, I think it was more that she just had like no synergy with her crew. So she's basically pretty standard like weak enforcer defensive stats, 5/5/5 with 7 health, but she does have armor and she can hide in the barrel to start with shielded. Kind of like the undercover reporter, they can have a barrel off. She does have squeal, so when your opponent hits her, she can squeal away. The big thing she does now is she can take a regular action to drop a scrap marker within 2 inches and then pulse out shielded within pulse 2 of the marker, which is nice. Free shielded is good. But then she can spend a bonus action to eat that scrap marker and then summon a Whiskey Gamin with slow. As you need a suitless 8. And then it has a built-in trigger to pulse out poison near her, so to the Whiskey Gamin you just made. And that is really good. I mean, technically you can do it with a 10 of crows, even if you have not made the scrap first, but the difference between needing a suitless 8 and a 10 of crows is a big deal, and needing a suitless 4 and then a suitless 8 to summon a 5-stone minion every turn is not very much of an investment.
Yeah. She makes them for almost no downside.
And they're good little schemers. I mean, we don't have to read through their whole card, but they have a weird ability where at the start of their activation they push equal to the amount of poison on them with no cap.
It's the best named. It's one of my favorite named abilities in the entire game. It is called driving while a drink. Right?
They are technically doing that. Yeah. They're summoned, so you can't strat scheme, but you can like. After the turn they're summoned, they can like scoot 20 inches into the opponent's deployment zone and start dropping scheme markers for power ritual and espionage and stuff.
And they have armor. Like they're not an easy out. They have 5 health and armor and defense 5, right?
Yeah, and the last thing I'm going to say about them, their card specifically, is they have daze as a trigger on their ranged attack. And yeah, it's not a very powerful ranged attack. It only inflicts poison, and it's a stat 5, but it's a stat 5 against movement. So it's usually at an even stat, and daze is kind of an insane trigger. So summoning dudes that can just like shoot your opponent's models with daze from 8 inches away is kind of a lot.
What do you think of Cooper, Pete? The new Cooper?
Well, I mean, the only thing she did before this was hire Whiskey Gamin, or not hire, but summon Whiskey Gamin, but she did it badly.
Yeah.
Because, right, you had to take the damage or reduce your poison to not take the damage on the Whiskey Gamin. And then the rest of her card was just crap on the back because it was either a 0 or 1 inch melee, and that was it. And you didn't want her kind of in the mix. But now she has this Hooch Lighter, which you can engage somebody 2 inches away and do burning damage, which is fine. Or she just randomly heals your own models, which is fantastic.
Yeah, to heal you could charge into.
Yeah, which if you've played Sparks, it's money.
It's not a living heal. It's you charge the Whiskey Golem and you heal it for 2.
Yeah, it's great. And then Barrel Blast also is just fantastic to, push models away from objectives or push them into positions, or also randomly has accidental rollover for more movement for her.
Great trigger. Really good trigger.
Yep, and then Barrel Armor, it's fantastic. Shielded on constructs is always good, and the keyword tends to be pretty durable anyway, so just a random shielded also is just great.
Yeah, shielded is a really big deal to put on models like Wesley too, because he's only got 4 health. So even if you have a bunch of poison on him, your opponent could just chip him down. But if Wesley's got like a shielded on him, then the first attack does 0, the second attack does 1. It's hard to chip him down.
I found during the
when we
unpack
talked about Wesley, did we mention the lasting liquor thing they added?
We did. We mentioned it. It's only 2 inch aura, so it's. Yeah. I think it's tricky because you don't want him within 2 inches of models that are getting hit.
Yeah.
I also think I was going to say on the unpack, that shielded pulse is so easy to hit like most of your crew with on turn 1 too, which is nice.
Yeah.
So you can get some really nice, just like kind of evenly spread into incidental damage coverage for that first turn. Which is really nice.
Yeah, there's just nothing bad on her card now. Like, she's just a legit good enforcer, which is awesome.
I think you hire her at basically 100% of keyword crews. Like, she's 3 stone or 2 stones because you get a 5-stone minion basically for free.
Yeah.
So, would you pay 2 stones for this package if you were going to hire a Whiskey Gamin anyway? Yeah, of course you were.
For sure. Yeah, Barrel Blast is so good. I love this ability. This model is definitely it's super, super good now. You should hire it every time.
Yep. So then we've got Moonshiner. These guys were really competing against Fermented River Monks and were just worse than them. And now they're not competing or worse. They went down a stone. They're 5 costs. They're schemers. They've got stealth. They've got the standard high tolerance, so they don't take poison. They have lasting liquors, so the poison condition can't be ended or reduced on them or nearby friendlies. They have hard to kill to go with stealth, and they're fairly weak defensive stats. It's just 5 defense, 5 willpower, 5 health. And they have the all-important drunken kung fu, just like their boss. Although their attacks are much less impressive. They've got a 2-3. Their melee attack is interesting. It's a 2-3-3 that deals poison. They used to have a drink, which was just poison +2, and they had staggering punch, which is a 0-inch 2-3-4 that staggered. And this new attack is kind of a hybrid, where it deals damage and it does poison, and it's a 2-inch, but it's a lower stat. But it's got really interesting triggers. Sloshed is, heals 2 and gains distracted 1, which is basically heals 2 and gains focus. And Pop In is just like a little bleep, little mini place, which is really kind of cool. It's really useful for scheming. What do you guys think of their new attack? The 2-3-3 is interesting because it means even though you are getting the drunken kung fu bonus, it's not like you can spike and deal 1,000,000 damage.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's never going to be pushing crazy amounts of damage, I guess. But I think it's fine.
Yeah. There's models that and we all know this. There's models in Malifaux that kind of you do the min 3 damage test. It's like, can this model take 2 min 3 hits? If the answer is no, the Moon Shinobi can just kill it. So, Cooper's dogs, the Moon Shinobi just kills it.
Yeah, that's true. Thinking about these guys as a min 3, but a min 3 that cannot spike up is maybe a good way of thinking about it.
Think about it. You're very rarely going to hit 2 on this. It's just you're either going to hit mod or severe in most of these duels.
Yeah. And then they've got It's 5 o'clock somewhere, which is an 8-inch range stat 5 on willpower that just gives poison +2, but you can reduce your own poison to build in one of its triggers. And the triggers are either give yourself and the target 1 poison or give yourself and the target 1 distracted. I don't think you will ever target an enemy model with this. I think you will sometimes target a friendly model to either gas him up with poison or in the case of Brewmaster 2 to gas him up with distracted.
Yeah, I think turn 1 specifically, I was talking with Edic about this, and I think turn 1 with Moonshiner, you probably bring 2 Moon Shinobis, and turn 1 you go, cool, I'm going to drunken confusion me and Moonshiner. I'm going to go ahead and do a walk, and then I'm going to unnatural speed, and here we are going through the turn.
Yeah, unnatural speed I didn't mention, but it's like a little mini leap. It's a half-size leap.
Yep, it's a fair leap.
I do think that their other bonus action is interesting, just because models that have self-healing and hard to kill are really good.
Yeah, it gives you the option of being like, self-healing hard to kill models kick ass.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah, these guys are really hard to kill. They are very, very good at dealing with other schemers, so that puts them in like super strong counter schemer territory. And like the fact that they're hard to kill means they can go out and just like sort of survive unless somebody wants to basically full activation try and deal with them. I think these models are super, super good, and you're probably going to hire one if not two in almost every Brewmaster list. Period.
I think that also they are probably the best ghillie suit wearer in the game.
Yeah.
Because the height, nobody cares. The getting a Bayou gremlin is kind of nice. The disguised is actually really nasty with stealth. Stealth and disguised is just a really frustrating combo to play into, as anyone who has had to do that can tell you. Because you can't charge them and you can't shoot them unless you walk up to them. But more importantly, it gives them a bonus action that's a gun. That's a stat 6 projectile gun. And you know what projectile guns do a lot is suffer from negative flips from cover, concealment, and friendly fire. And you know what drunken kung fu does is it turns those into positive flips. So your opponent can be like hiding, hiding a model in, behind some concealment in a melee, and you can be like, okay, I'll just shoot you with a stat 6 double plus to hit. And then if I do hit you, I can, I'm likely to, I could just cheat and then be at a positive to damage.
It's worth noting that the profile of the sidearm, while it's a better stat, like stat 6, it's a very similar damage profile to the punch. So you're still probably targeting similar targets, right? Like,
yeah. It's a 2-3-4. You're not setting the world on fire with it, but
yeah.
I do think something you will be doing sometimes is you will sometimes snipe a totem with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, don't hear what I'm not saying, by the way. Like drunken kung fu on a gun kicks fucking ass.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. So they're a little pricey, but like 7 stones for a 5-stone minion with a ghillie suit is not unreasonable. Like I think 7 stones is an amount that's easier to fit into lists. It's them going down a stone matters a lot, and it's like it's hard for me to even see why they were 6 stones before, because they lost almost nothing.
Yeah, I mean, ghillie suit is good on this model, and I think I would bring it more for the disguise. So if I know my opponent has a lot of melee and a lot of beaters that are going to try to come at me, I think that's just good on the Shinobi. The gun's fine. I mean, it gives you 3 attacks, but honestly, I don't feel like I'm going to be hunting down models with the Moon Shinobi. I think most of the time, the strongest position for a Moon Shinobi to be in is to have models try to chase it down.
Yeah.
Because you want models to walk, charge, or something like that. And if they can't charge, then it's like, okay, well, they have to walk, and attack. That feels really bad. So it's just going to discourage people from coming into them.
And to be fair though, like it just gives you another really good versatile action. At that point, this model has 3 fast actions.
Bonuses are really good though.
Yeah, it has 3 bonuses, all of which are good. One of which heals a hard itself, which is a hard to kill model.
The reason I don't like that
Movement and
action though on the bonus is because it puts you into being out of stealth range. It's only 6 inches. When I play a stealth model, I always try to position 7 inches or more away from pretty much anything. And I think usually that's kind of how you want to pilot a stealth model.
Yeah, I think the thing with the gun for me is that it makes them really able to hunt down other scheme runners and kill them, because that's the thing we often talk about with the scheme runners is this model able to deal with like the damned or the blessed or something. Like if you give this guy the gun and your opponent has the damned, this guy could just kill the damned because it's hard to wound.
I think
so he's going to go 3-3-4, you're dead.
A lot of scheme runners though, min 3 2 times will probably kill it though.
Not through hard to kill.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I really think there's a lot to be said for the disguised as well in the counter scheming war.
Yeah.
I think you need to evaluate these models if you're planning to use them for scheming, which you probably should. I mean, they're, if your opponent has something that is fast and is killy, the disguise is going to really help. And if they don't, I don't think it's worth it. 14 points is a lot more points than 10 points. Although I don't know how tight the list is because I haven't built one. I've just played against it a bunch. But yeah, they seem really good with or without the ghillie suits.
Also, hear me out. Instead of 4 points on upgrades, just spend one more and get another Shinobi.
Yeah, get a third Shinobi.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, dude.
So we got one more model that got changed, and it's Shojo. And I'm going to be a little sad here because I really like Shojo, and my Shojo is really well painted. But this model, I think, just doesn't do anything anymore.
I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, so what Shojo used to do is sit there in your deployment zone printing pass tokens and healing your other models. And that was really good. It was way too good. Printing pass tokens is like not a good combination of words in Malifaux.
Yeah,
so she no longer does that.
It shouldn't do that.
So she has high tolerance, so no alcohol damage. She's incorporeal. She has the same thing that we saw from the Ashes of Malifaux Qi Gong stuff, where she generates a favor token at the start of her turn, and she can discard a favor token instead of a pass token to activate an action or ability. And she may either discard a pass token, i.e. a favor token, or reduce her poison condition by 2 to get a plus to any duel. And then, so that stuff's kind of interesting, the favor token stuff. Her action, she's got a boring conversation, which is great. Everyone loves boring conversation. It has some good built-in triggers. But beyond that, she just has the same high-proof punch as the Moonshiner have, but without drunken kung fu. And then some interesting triggers. One gives her a favor token, gives the target distracted. And then she has poisonous words, which is basically a ranged attack that just hands out distracted and poison. And then has some interesting triggers like, heal a friendly within 3 inches of her, give yourself a favor token, push the target 2 inches towards you. The problem is just that, like, the only thing she does on her card that is good is boring conversation, and she's super fragile. Like, super, super fragile. 5/5 stats with 6 health, and incorporeal as her only defensive tech means this model just is gonna die if she's within 6 inches for boring conversation. So, I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't love what she's doing either. I think poisonous words maybe is a thing. She's moved 6 now, which is cool, I guess. She kind of does some damage, which is fine. But boring conversation's kind of the good thing on her card. But I think at that point she just becomes a hot target and then probably just dies. But I don't know. I'm hoping somebody will find some cool thing to do with her. And maybe
I would consider her at 5 stones, but I would not even necessarily hire her at 5 stones.
For 1 less stone, you get a Shinobi, which we just talked about.
Or for the same stones, you get like a Fermented River Monk, which still do all the stuff they used to do, which was really good. It was good enough to hire 3 of them before.
And honestly, if you want to play the control game, Brewmaster 1 already does it fine without boring conversation, so why are you bringing it?
And that's the other thing is the crew does not already tax your opponent's hand. You don't have a lot of abilities that force your opponent to discard cards. You don't have a lot of abilities that force your opponent to pass TNs, like Shockwaves. So this isn't like, if you're playing her in Qi and Gong, right, then you're already taxing your opponent's hand. You've got, Unseen Manipulator, you've got various hand attack stuff. But, so I can see that. But we're not playing her in Qi and Gong. We're playing her in Tri-Chi, and it just doesn't have that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you said, hand tax stuff really only gets good at a point at which you're layering lots of it, because you start to see the effect on the back end of that type of endeavor, rather than slightly lightly taxing the hand and then the opponent's like, all right, like, I have this shitty 2 or this shitty 5, I'll pitch it. Cool, thanks, Sam.
And you also really want to activate boring conversation models early. And if you activate this model early and put her within 6 inches of the action, she's just gonna die.
Yeah, that's killer.
I mean, you're not wrong. I don't know. Poisonous Words has some synergy with Brewmaster 2. I don't think you're ever hiring this in Brewmaster 1, but she does stuff, I guess. I think that there's a fine line between models that are ridiculous and are just pass token factories, and models that aren't hireable, and I think that they skewed too hard on the line of not hireable.
Yeah, I think that it's good to not have pass token generation in this game to anywhere near the extent that there is, but she needs to have a different thing she does. And right now she doesn't.
Yeah, I think they need to rework this for sure. And quite frankly, if Brewmaster 2 had pass token printing, I would be really mad. It would be way too much.
You know what? Honestly, this is a nerf to 10 Thunders as a faction, because some people, Landon, were hiring Shojo and a Fermented River Monk out of keyword in other 10 Thunders lists just to print pass tokens.
Also, while we're on the topic, #nerf Yoko. Back to you.
Anyways, so Like, I don't know. I'm sad because Shojo's a cool model. But I think she just got caught up in the crossfire of midway through an edition, Wyrd decided that something is not, that like a certain thing is not something they want to exist in the game anymore. And I think that's the correct decision, like not having past token generation efficiently be in the game anymore. But she got caught up in that.
Yeah, they kind of realized a glaringly, ridiculously powerful mechanic, and she got caught up in that, which I would have liked to at least have seen her do something else mechanically rather than, just kind of be poopy.
But you do have a lot of other keyword models that you'll be hiring. So I think that's fine. I think that's everyone who got reworked. I want to just briefly mention a model that I think deserves, like a model that wasn't changed, that has changed how it plays because of the update. And then I think you guys, maybe if you want to do the same. But for me, it's the Whiskey Golem. I mean, this thing I think is criminally underhired. It's a golem, so it has 3, 4, 6. It has Onslaught, which is a really strong trigger. It walks as a bonus action, so it's basically a 3 AP model 100% of the time. And it's like all golems, it's armor 2, but unlike other golems, it's def 6.
6 on a golem.
It's
stat
stat 6.
This is underhired.
Because it's an extremely efficient beater. And I think that the people, people don't like paying.
I hire it all the time, and people that I talk to about Tri-Chi hire it all the time.
I mean, out of keyword. I think this is a stronger out of keyword hire that it gets credit for. I think that the issue there is that the out of keyword hire, the out of keyword beater slot in Bayou is fulfilled elsewhere, but it is, it's a cool model. I think that the important thing is, and sort of the reason I'm mentioning it is, Brewmaster 1, a lot of the time, is just going to obey this guy 3 times in a single turn, and he's going to move 18 inches into your crew and kill 3 models.
Do you like taking 18 damage from a Whiskey Golem? Well, you're going to love it.
And the other thing is this crew has focus generation. Like, there are things in this crew that generate focus, and nobody in the crew really cares about being focused except for the Whiskey Golem. So, like, Apprentice Wesley is going to give this guy focus. Tanuki, if you hire them, which I think you probably won't, but you could, are going to give this guy focus.
Also, traditionally, Whiskey Golem, really good for inferiority complex, so that's the thing.
Hoochdini gives this guy focus.
So
there's a lot of ways to give this guy focus, and nobody else in the keyword really cares about being focused, and this guy cares a lot about it. So I think a lot of the time, if you build your list properly, the golem is going to be going into a turn with 2 focus and a bunch of extra AP. This thing is going to beat ass.
And I think you see the golem as a central piece, like build around piece, especially in Brewmaster 1 lists.
Yes.
Especially.
I think in Brewmaster 2, I probably wouldn't hire him just because, you might, but you're already playing Brewmaster 2, who, as we've said, is really killy. If you need the extra killing power that a golem generates, at this point, I'm wondering why you didn't declare a different keyword.
I agree.
Yeah, I think there's no world that you're not hiring the Whiskey Golem in Brew 1.
Well, I think there are some pools where you are totally content to just, like, obey 3 Moon Shinobi to move and interact, and you win the game that way.
I mean, maybe, but, like, wouldn't it be better if you killed all of your opponent's models instead? And I think the answer is yes.
Well, the problem with that, though, is there are some matchups where the Whiskey Golem will just die turn 1 or 2.
I think Guild, especially with that armor piercing on the gun. And now being stat 6 is a big deal because it means that you can generally stop Melissa Core from getting to a straight flip against him. Which, is kind of, because, like, you always have to worry if your opponent's going to hire Melissa Core with expert marksman into Guild. But that's another thing with the Whiskey Golem is I think that if you're willing to fake it out, like if your opponent thinks you're going to take a Golem and hires like an expert marksman Melissa Core or something, and then you just don't hire him and hire 3 stealthy Moon Shinobi, your opponent's list looks awful into yours, like real bad.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's some matchups like that where you kind of can head fake a little bit, where they're thinking Whiskey Golem smash, 10 times in a turn or whatever. And then you just go, I'm just going to go ahead and get these Moon Shinobi with the Moonshiner and, just scheme you, have some Cooper Jones action with some...
Sometimes your game plan with Brewmaster is like, okay, so your whole crew's slow because you're in my bubble, and your whole crew's stunned because I summoned 2 Whiskey Gamin that are throwing out stuns, and I'm obeying you, so I'm pushing you 12 inches off the point. Obey walk.
There's a weird ability, not only with the stealth, but with Hoochdini, Barrelby, Cooper, There's also a weird range you can get with Brewmaster, which is kind of insane.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting things here. But moving off the Golem, do you guys have any other, or if you have thoughts on the Golem, or if you have any other Tri-Chi models that you think should get another look now that the rework's been done?
So when you say another look, do you mean that they should kind of be touched up as well?
No, like models that you maybe wouldn't have hired before, but you will now because the keywords changed around them, or maybe models who you think their role has changed.
Or even just key models that you like, Pete.
I actually think, and I was thinking about this the other day, with the changes of the keyword now, especially with the two masters, Akaname are still good, but you don't necessarily need them to help stack the point. Like the game where you bring a bunch of things to stack poison up, past like 18, 20 on a model, you really don't need to do that much anymore with Brewmaster. So the Akaname, you don't really need to bring them for as much with the foul gift. It's more I'm thinking about bringing them now if I got to remove markers.
Yeah, it's anti-marker tech.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think, and also just harassing your opponent with putting slow on them. That's kind of where I'm like, okay, yeah, I think Akaname is probably good there.
Especially in matchups where you think they won't get picked off at range.
Like I'm playing against Jim with, he's doing Ophelia, and I brought 2 Akaname just in case he wants to spam glass hazardous markers.
Yeah. That's fun.
It's hilarious. I mean, this is probably not news to any Tri-Chi player. Myself, I just today, before this episode, finished putting a new coat of paint on my Tri-Chi keyword, and Fingers Leong was really, really fun to play with in my test games last night with Brandon. He just does a lot of stuff, draws a ton of cards.
Did you find him better in one versus the other? Because I think he might be better in Moonshiner.
Yeah, he didn't play him in Moonshiner. He only played him in one.
I didn't play him in Moonshiner, but I think because of how when I did the unpack with the hazardous bubble aura, I was able to generate like very effortlessly crazy amounts of poison really quickly. And I think that it might have been easier to get that poison stack up on him to then do the flush and then do the big card draw. Because that's the big thing everybody loves, right? Like get poison really high, draw 4 cards or something, 5 cards. I think I was only able to draw 4 cards in my match with him, but it felt really powerful. So
yeah, I also think with the changes, Popcorn Turner probably becomes more interesting. So I'm kind of excited to put him back on the table.
I think he's always been fine.
He's been fine, but I think he's got more interesting.
He's a very, very, very maneuverable model. He's move 6. He has on the move. He has an accidental rollover trigger on his stat 6 1-inch engage, so he can go 3-inch on the move, charge you 6 inches, accidental rollover 5 inches, and I have an AP and a bonus left.
Like so, he's Popcorn Turner can just be living in your opponent's deployment zone now.
Yeah.
So you're just like you're saying you take him when you need to like flip the full board with this motherfucker.
He also has Breath of Fire, which is just like an extremely strong ranged attack on everyone who has it. Yeah. Stat 6 Breath of Fire. So and he's a henchman, so he can stay alive reasonably easily. So it's not hard to sort of dive him in there and then kill something with Breath of Fire and then be a problem your opponent has to deal with.
Popcorn Turner is a henchman? What?
Yep.
Wow.
Straight up.
Wild stuff, Brandon.
All right, so here's the question, gentlemen, and I'll propose this to the council because I have 2 big questions. First question: what's the deal with Barrelby? How do you guys feel about him now? In either 1 or 2.
I have an instinctive negative reaction to hiring Def 4 Def 4 models, basically.
Coward.
With whose only defensive tech is armor. That said, I mean, people who I trust have said that he's working well for them. And his ramming speed is just a really, really strong rule.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard enough competent pilots say that Barrelby is good to kind of like crook my head and be like, maybe it's the meme where Principal Chalmers from The Simpsons, like maybe it's me, like
Dude,
it's the children who are
on
wrong.
The podcast, yeah. I asked a very general Bayou question. I was like, okay, what is the best jockey now in Bayou? And he's like hands down Barrelby. So he likes Barrelby
Why?
No, it's
Than
Bo
Bo,
Peep. It's always
better
going to be
than-
Bo
Yeah,
Peep. It will
that's-
never not be Bo Peep.
I don't know if I would go that far. I definitely think that Bo Peep is still Bo Peep, but I'm willing to try Barrelby.
Well,
We'll do
here's
stuff
the
with
reason
him.
why Barrelby is good. So, like, you can be concerned about defense 4, but he's going to have shielded and armor, so that's fine. The biggest things with him is the mobility. You just don't see the mobility coming with him a lot of times. Just his bonus pushes him. He also just has accidental rollover, which is huge. So there's times where I got this model in positions where I just didn't think I could get him into, and it was pretty cool to see.
So would you say that he has a lot of the same positive attributes as Popcorn Turner, but less expensive?
I think Popcorn Turner does something a little different though, because his damage is probably better, and then also he's probably a little more survivable. I think the biggest difference why I would take Barrelby over Popcorn is because of Barrel Blast, and then also just the extra movement on the bonus action. And the problem I have with Barrelby now is now that Cooper also has Barrel Blast, I'm kind of like, okay, well, do I just bring Cooper instead? So that's kind of my hesitation with
Cooper,
it. But
legit,
I know people
honestly.
still like him.
But like, I'm looking at this card. Like, I get it. Like, the fast action is good. Asleep at the wheel is really good.
Yeah, unless you're staggered, then it's 3.
Yeah, then it's bad.
Yeah, because remember, you're also getting on the charge accidental rollover just built in, so that's always good.
I would love him so much more if he had a 1-inch engage. If he had a 1-inch engage, I'd be like, this is a real model.
And that doesn't matter though, because you have a sleep at the wheel, so you can get
It matters because it severely constricts your angles if you have to get into base to base.
It does. But also, another thing that you want to think about is if you don't want to pay for a monk, this also puts out staggered. So he kind of helps out with the barrel blast if you want to push people off objectives and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to, like, the 1-2 punch of staggering punch, roll away, and then barrel blast somebody that you just staggering punched at stat 7. Like, that's good. I'm not going to say that's not good. It's just, the def 4 is really, like, I need to try him. Because I foresee...
Bayou, I'm not scared.
I mean, having 7 health and armor is nice, but, like, if your opponent wants to kill this guy, it's not going to be hard for them to make.
I mean, you have
happen.
shielded as well. You keep skipping over the shielded.
If you stagger yourself, which turns off a lot of your other stuff.
And a significant amount of your movement. Also, for 6 points, you could just get literally a Fermented River Monk is the same cost. I don't know.
Yeah, you have sober up. It's fine.
I don't know.
All right,
I don't like this guy.
So then what about, I mean, we have, like, to be fair, we've literally just mentioned Fermented River Monk casually, like, every 5 minutes during this video, so I feel like we should just talk about these guys really quickly. Like, obviously the card didn't change, right? But the biggest thing that changed from a contextual perspective here is that it used to just be better than Moonshinobi, right? Like, it was just a better choice, so you just took it. You just, most of the time, didn't take Moonshinobi. Now Moonshinobi are, for lack of a better word, really high-tier schemers, right? And these guys can push damage. Given the change to the keywords, Sam and Pete, do you guys feel that their roles have changed? Do you feel like you hire them more or less? Are they truly now like a damage push tech piece? What's your guys' perspective on that?
I mean, it's marginally harder to get them to a billion, jillion, million focus, or not focus, poison, because another round is now once per turn. But realistically, that I used to be able to get them up to like the 20s, so now I can get them to like the high teens or 20 on turn 1 if I really want to. And once you do that, there's still armor 2 dudes who can either punch, they can punch at a stat 7 4 5 6 or a stat 7 2 3 4 irreducible. So they still do the same thing. I think you don't hire 1, you hire 3 or 0. And if you hire 3, it's because you're specifically putting together a plan of having the like brawling in the middle with a bunch of these just nearly unkillable, like super high damage monks. And if that's your whole plan, that's fine. You can do that. There are keywords that will lose to that. But
Man,
you just gotta
3 or 0. That's wild.
That's a hot take, maybe. I don't know. I mean,
well, so I do think especially in this gaining grounds, you see them a lot less. Maybe in future ones where it's a little more brawly, you probably see them more. I will say, I think they're better with Moonshiner than they are with the OG.
Oh yeah.
Because you can put out 2 hazardous poison.
No, I would never hire them with the OG. Like you don't do that. You could now that is actually an important thing, is that if you put Brewmaster's hazardous aura on some, remember you can't have them be in 2 auras because it's 2 copies of the same effect, and his personal aura is enemy models only.
Yeah.
So you can't be in 2 hazardous auras, which is good because that would make these guys truly unreasonable. But the reason I say it's 3 or 0 is that if you're hiring a Fermented River Monk, your plan is, I'm going to put as much poison on this guy as the game rules allow me to do, and then I'm going to send him at your opponent. Yep. And all of the ways to put poison on or not all, but most of the ways to put poison on your models are AoE. So it's just as efficient to do it to 3 models as it is to do it to 1. And just committing to the plan gives you 3 of these just like terrifying, unstoppable beaters.
Yeah, I think I'm more of a fan of 2, but I can see a game in another gaining grounds where 3's better. But I think I was talking with Edic about this on the podcast. There is a very good, probably Moonshiner list where you can just hire things below 7 soulstones, and it's actually not a bad list.
Yeah. It's 3 Fermented River Monks, maybe Hoochdini, like Cooper Jones.
Well, Hoochdini's 7, isn't he?
He's 7. Oh, you said under 7.
Yeah, he's saying under 7.
Under 7, yeah.
Well, no, because you always hire Cooper.
Cooper seems insane to me. Like, it just seems like you probably start all of these Master lists.
Cooper is like practically free.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, you easily get like 2 of the robots out of her. And she's like,
but do you hire Cooper if you're going to hire 2 Whiskey Gamin?
I'm probably not hiring Whiskey
I wouldn't
Gamin.
hire 2 Whiskey Gamin because
no, there's very real games where you want the Whiskey Gamin to be able to interact with the strategy.
So the reason I don't like that as much is that Whiskey Gamin are actually pretty easy to kill or mess with. They're willpower 3. I don't want to have my strat rely on them. I think it's better to have your strat rely on the models you hired and have Whiskey Gamin do scheming.
I can see a corner deployment where it's going to be very difficult to pin those models down, especially if the matchup's right, where they can pretty much go unharassed most of the game unless they want to send a real model after a 5 soulstone model.
I can see it on Planet.
I would probably rather spend 5 soulstones on a Moon Shinobi than a Whiskey Gamin most of the time, to be honest.
Whiskey Gamin are pretty hard to catch once they got the poison up.
But like, who's to say?
Yeah, I actually like the Whiskey Gamin idea on like a corner strat or like Cloak and Dagger, where you just put the two markers in the corner and just go ham. So I think though that it is important to note, all glory to the Hypnotoad, and we didn't talk about Hopscotch. What about Hoochdini and Hopscotch? I mean, I played against Hoochdini one time because the kit just came out. But are we ever hiring either of these in Brewery?
I think Hoochdini is great. Hoochdini has always been great.
What does he do?
He gets plus 4 inches on his tactical action, and then he gets to push 10 inches into base contact with a friendly, heal them or end a condition, and then have 1 of 3 nice bonus effects.
Okay, so he can heal models.
He does a lot of stuff. He heals. His Ale Drench Blast attack is really, really strong when it's a 12-inch range. He needs glowy. I think it's a little tougher in this keyword than in Whizbang because it's harder to stack a ton of glowy on him because the way he gets glowy is suffering damage from poison. But you can do stuff like target him with blood poisoning.
Yeah.
And have him do damage from poison.
He also got some accidental rollovers to ping him too.
Yep, and he has that doesn't give him glowy. He doesn't have hard knock life. He has work, so he has to suffer damage from poison. That said, he gets 1 free 1 every turn from Prestidigitation because he has a built-in trigger. It's a bonus action. He has a built-in trigger to generate it. He's really good in Moonshiner because he has a shockwave that hands out distracted. So you just drop it and you're like, oh, my Moon Shinobi and Brewmaster are all distracted for a single bonus action that also gave me a glowy. I think most of the time what you're doing is you are like stacking some glowy on him, and then you're just going to use I Need a Volunteer to push 10 inches and like do useful things.
Yeah. And then Hopscotch just is like a bad beater.
I don't know what Hopscotch does.
No, so here I've had some decent games with Hopscotch. I have to try him with the new Brewmaster because I used him as kind of a delivery system for the old Brew 1. But Sticky Tongue's good just to get some models into position and just kind of, get them up the board. Creep Along's good. He also has slippery, so there's been some cases where people are kind of like guarding an objective or something, and I just go, cool, I'm going to go and I'm going to interact to pick that up, and they're mad because they forgot he was slippery.
Here's what I'll say about Hopscotch is A, creep along is great, so because he's a 3 AP model, which is the bar, and B, he has a weirdly long list of things he's immune to. He's immune to blasts, pulses, shockwaves, poison damage, attacks from more than 0 inches away, and he's hard to wound. Yep. So there's like a long list of things that just don't hurt him or hurt him less, and he's got 8 health, and you have healing in this keyword. You have a lot of healing in this keyword, so I just think he's got like a lot of like weird. Oh, and perverse metabolism, obviously. That's, by the way, perverse metabolism is not as common in this keyword. It's mostly they have high tolerance, so they mostly just take 0 instead of healing. But perverse metabolism means you could just target this guy with blood poisoning and heal him for 5.
Yep.
Yeah, buddy. That's a mid-morning special.
So Hopscotch is like he's like a weirdly resilient, relatively cheap dude who, like, your opponent is going to have to invest more into killing him than they think they are. And in the meantime, he's just sort of messing with their plans. But ultimately, I am struggling with, like, how to make him do work. And I think I just have to try him.
Yeah, the worst thing I found with him is there is some things that are too big for him to do his tongue lashing or his sticky tongue on. So then I've played with the idea of making him a size bigger, but I'm still playing with him. He's a new model. I'm going to get him and Hoochdini sent to the paint shop, and when I get them all pretty, they're going to join the crew and figure out how to play them.
It's super sad that you can't put a cloak on him and then let him lick the golem. I'm against the golems. I was like, oh, you could do that to the golem, but no, the golem's size
still
4.
too big.
Size 4.
Also, just like shout out to the fact that he comes with, like, if you've ever built this model IRL, he has an optional little hat and monocle
and bow tie.
And bow tie.
Did you make that? And I was like, yeah, that comes standard, my dude.
Oh yeah, I glued mine on.
Oh, of course, yeah, you got to. It's the best.
Yes, this is not removable. This is part of him. It's part of his body.
Same.
Yeah. I do think it is cool how much stuff he's immune to. Like, you start listing and you're like, wow, there's just a bunch of stuff that doesn't hurt him.
Yeah, it is interesting to say, you know, like, all right, well, I've got 2 pieces of incidental tech. Is that good? Maybe. I've got 3. Is that good? I don't know. I've got 4. Is that good? It's probably starting to get pretty good. Maybe at this point when you have 4 to 5 pieces of incidental tech, you know?
Well, and it's not only that he's immune to it, but he also gains something.
He benefits from it. This guy is, I would say, he's much more interesting to me in Whizbang. I'll leave it with that. I think that he maybe does some stuff in Tri-Chi, but Whizbang is where I think he really does work.
Okay,
that's fine.
I think that's fair because, like I said, I used him with Brew 1 before the changes. I don't think I need him in this version of Brew 1, but I'm going to play him and see.
So I guess just to wrap this whole scenario up then, I guess the big question that opposed to the council here is, in general, after these changes, what do you think Tri-Chi is good at? And when do you want to be bringing whichever version or generally looking at this keyword? And on the flip side of that, are there any specific weaknesses to Tri-Chi in general that shine out to you still?
So for me, I think that Tri-Chi this is the question I'm still struggling with. I think that broadly, I would say that Tri-Chi is a crew that is a somewhat resilient brawly crew because it's hard to engage them on terms you want to. They have a lot of defensive tech that stops them from being engaged properly or makes your opponent jump through hoops to do it. And they're really good at controlling space on the board. So that naturally makes me think of things like Raid the Vaults and like maybe Stuff the Ballots, especially with Brewmaster 1. And maybe Cloak and Dagger actually with Brewmaster 1. But I'm gonna counteract that by saying in terms of brawly crews, I don't think they do nearly as much damage as other brawly Bayou crews. And I also think that because their gimmick is dependent on a condition, they sometimes will run into stuff that just counters that, like condition removal or condition immune crews or crews that have like poison immune crews. I think the mirror match of this looks very weird. So I also think that they don't have any good keyword answers to armor. I would not run this. I would not declare Brewmaster into Guild just because leadline coats are the augmented keyword, and Guild has a lot of condition removal.
I mean, leadline coat doesn't. So I wouldn't mind playing against Guild in raid the vaults just because you can still move them off of points. But yeah, the armor is probably a problem.
Yeah, and the condition removal. Like, there's so much condition removal in Guild. You've got Stewie, you've got Guild Mages, you've got models with Shrug Off. You've got Nellie's keyword condition stuff. I think it's her title that does it. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's going to be interesting going forward into a different gaining grounds, which we'll probably get sometime in the next 6 months, maybe.
Oh, I think sooner than that we'll probably get.
Maybe, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't pretend to know when, but I imagine it'd be sometime within the next 6 months. But I think anything where you want to fight in points, like on a spot in the board where you have to be at a spot, I think they're very good. Mainly because there's a lot of 2-inch reach in this crew. So you're going to stop them from stuffing ballots, or you're going to stop them from interacting. You're going to also make it where their actions aren't as efficient, because if they don't also have 2-inch reach, they're going to have to waste AP walking or moving or whatever. And then also they're pretty good at taxing you, especially with Brew 1. I think Brew 2 is a little more mobile in general. So I think where you need a little more mobility, that's probably where you reach. But it's one of those things where I think he probably moves into the top 4 or top 5 of Bayou Masters. But you kind of start competing in some very real spots where the keyword's still going to get a little outclassed by Trixie, Infamous, and Zoraida. I think it's tough for him to overtake those 3, but he also does some things that those crews don't do altogether well. So I'm definitely interested to get more games with him with these new variations, because I think he answers some hard questions. Like I said, the Rezer question, I think he answers very well for Bayou.
Yeah, he's an all-star against Rezers.
Yeah, so that's really scary for green. I mean, Molly is just like undeclarable into Bayou.
Yeah, if the wrong keyword drops into Brewmaster, it might, and if everything else is equal, it might just be done.
I mean, I'm just like, I know I keep coming back to this in like the Discord, but like, look at Brewmaster 2. Imagine what happens if he gets into Molly. It's just like, it's so rude.
She just dies.
She just like instantly dies. She has to stone 3 times and flip a 2 or better, or like a moderate or better on every single one to survive at 1 health.
And she's probably still taking 2 damage.
She's still poisoned. She's still poisoned.
Yeah, that too.
So she's like it's just so insane. I mean, Molly is an extreme example because of her extremely low health and serene countenance, but like a lot of Rezer Masters are hard to wound, and most of them don't have armor.
Yeah. Well, I think even extrapolate that one part further away. A shitload of Rezer models are hard to wound.
Yep.
And generally, they have like slightly lower health, so your stat 6 attack is probably hitting most of the time.
Do you hate Kruligans? Well, bring a Moon Shinobi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
really good.
Yeah, they're good against them. I feel fine. I played with Molly last night against Brewmaster. I had no problems. The only worry is that if they get to Molly, which, like, if you're playing Molly right, you probably shouldn't be in that position, and anything that gets close should die unless it's Brewmaster himself. So Brewmaster 2, I think, is a problem. But
you were playing Brewmaster 1 into Molly 1.
The hard to wound part is bad for Rezers for sure. But I don't know. Kruligans are the best minions in the game. Yeah, that's what I got. Yeah, I like the reworks. My only in general, I think my only concern is that Brewmaster 2 might be too strong. But I think all in all, the keyword really needed a rework, and I think everything that they did was generally speaking good, except Shojo, who needs to be redone.
I am still a little worried about guns with not with Moonshiner, but with the keyword in general, because Moon Shinobi have stealth, but everything else I'm kind of worried about good guns just tearing apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is definitely sort of a general concern. But you know, the way to counter guns in Malifaux is almost always not like hire the right models; it's use the board correctly. So
and engage the models.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm excited for this keyword. I think it's cool. I'm looking forward to getting some reps in on it. I really, my try cheap keyword is pretty painted, although like 2 of the models that aren't painted, like 2 of the few models in this keyword that aren't painted for me are Moon Shinobi and also Cooper. So womp womp, I need to get on that.
I just got to paint the 2 toads, baby. I'm gonna try to do a crazy like glittery rainbow effect on Hopscotch.
Love it.
It's gonna be
Don't lick the
amazing.
toad.
Yeah, no, dude, definitely lick the toad. Anyway,
100%.
Pete, thank you so much for coming on, man. We will always appreciate it. Pete and I have been sparring every so often nowadays, and it's really fun. So maybe at some point we'll finally record an episode. It'll be interesting of me and Pete playing a game or something. Before we leave, Pete, do you have anything you want to pitch for Rage Quit Wire, or what's going on with you, or anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, just they can always check out the podcast. We pretty much release an episode every week almost, if not every 10 days. So we put out a lot of podcast content. We try to do at least one YouTube video a month, but that's been slowed down by the holidays, but that'll pick back up. And then we also have a Discord channel where we just have a lot of people chatting about the game. And then we also do a, if not weekly, bi-weekly fireside chat where a bunch of us just hop in the voice channel and just kind of hang out, and we'll like smoke cigars or smoke pipes. At least I will.
Well, I guess, gentlemen, collectively, thank you. Always enlightening to be a member of the Brain Trust here.
Yeah, everyone. And let us know how you are enjoying playing with Brewmaster once you get a chance to do it.
Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the planet. You can check out the video description below for all of our important info and links. You can see a link to the Discord if you want to come be nerds on the internet with us. We have channels for like all the games that we're playing and all of our community members are excited about. You can also check out all of our affiliate links for like our Redbubble merch store, our Pro Acryl discount code because they make the best hobby supplies on our planet and yours. And of course, our Wyrd affiliate link if you're buying Malifaux stuff straight from Jonathan Q. Wyrd himself. Most importantly, though, you can see a link to our Patreon where I post things from time to time, like behind-the-scenes cuts or early vids, and we even have a tier where I'll bake you cookies and send them to you in real life. Thanks a ton to our current patrons who cover the cost of all of our software to make these videos, and we couldn't do it without them. You can see their names appearing now across the screen. And until next time, goodbye, the internet. We did it!